You're always reading now, Bella. You're losing some of your adorable way of speaking.
I'm a changeable feast, as are all of we. Apparently, according to Emerson, disagreed with by Harry.
Come, just come.
You were in my son.
What?
Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin Lundberg, and I'm here with Becca Camerata, my right-hand woman. How are you, Bex?
I'm good. How are you, Daniela?
Oh, so good. I am so jazzed for today's episode.
I know you're so excited about this one.
I just got finished voting for the Academy Awards, and nominations have just come out. And so in a very timely manner, we are interviewing the producers of Poor Things, which is one of my favorite films of the season. So I am so excited for them. I'm so excited to hear the process of the film.
I think that Yorgos is such a fascinating filmmaker, and his films tend to be very divisive. This one is no different, but it is getting so much love from both critics and audiences.
Yes.
And I'm sure the process of making it was pretty wild. So I'm very excited to hear the story.
Yeah, let's get going.
Let's do it.
Ed Guiney and Andrew Lowe, I am so excited to talk about your film, Poor Things. I unabashedly can say that it's one of my favorite films of the year. The sort of background of the pod is like we're meant to really laud the films of our history that like have impacted us over time and still live today. And I have to say, I believe Poor Things is going to be one of those films that we talk about for forever. So I'm so thrilled you guys are joining me today to talk about the film. So guys, hello.
Hi,
Daniela.
how are you?
Thanks for having us.
Why don't one of you take the initial lead and just tell me your first memory, and we'll go from there.
Do you want me to start, Andrew, or do you want to go?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll jump in. Yeah.
So it was. I think so. So we've sort of had the privilege and pleasure of working with Yorgos on all his English language films, starting off with The Lobster, and in fact we first met him when we had a script for what became The Favourite. And we had seen DOGTOOTH, and we sent him the script at that point, and he saw something in it and was very interested in it. It was before Tony McNamara got involved. And at that time, he was sort of thinking about, leaving Greece and starting to work in English language film, etc. So we called him at the right moment.
So Ed, let me just stop you for our loyal listeners. You saw a film that was a Greek film that he had directed.
Greek film, yeah.
Okay.
DOGTOOTH, which he made. It was Oscar nominated, I think, in 2010, around that time. I think around that time, I know, Oscar nominated film. Brilliant film. So we started talking to him about what became The Favourite, and then he moved to London, and then he came to us with the idea for The Lobster, which we jumped onto and made, and had a great time working with him. And then soon after that, we were just talking about other things because that collaboration had gone well. He's obviously an incredibly unique and special filmmaker, so we were very keen to continue our working relationship with him. And he had, at that point, read Poor Things, Alistair Gray's novel, and mentioned it. And we read it and fell in love with it and with its ambition, without really having a clue how we would get to make it.
And this was before The Favourite or after The Favourite?
Yeah, no, it was before The Favourite. So it was after The Lobster, after we'd finished shooting The Lobster, before The Favourite. So it was still, Yorgos, had really just made one English language film, albeit successful, but an art house hit, but not necessarily something that would indicate that you could raise the budget for something like Poor Things.
Sure.
But in a sense, it was our commitment to him and his passion for the project and his undeniable talent that just made us say, well, we just partner up with him and try to get it made. And that was really the beginning of the journey.
What happens then?
Do you want to take that up, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, well, I suppose it really sort of grew legs during The Favourite when Yorgos started talking to Emma about it, and she immediately responded to it and loved the sound of it. And then she subsequently read it and was very keen. And she's just such a clever, curious person that she just naturally wanted to be more involved and just ended up being a very natural producing partner on it. So that sort of really helped propel the project because, Yorgos and Emma had established a great working relationship on The Favourite. We also, all of us together, were working with Searchlight for the first time, and that was a really good experience. And naturally, the way these things evolve, they're like, so guys, what's next? And, this thing is and it's exciting and it's, Emma's interested. So it sort of just naturally came together in that way.
So The Favourite was such an exceptional experience and so successful for you guys and for Fox Searchlight. Did they sort of give you free rein on the development of Poor Things? Meaning, like, did they give script notes or were they sort of like, we trust Yorgos, this is his vision, this film feels very unusual, but we're all in?
In a sense, both.
Okay.
I mean, they, and as ever, the kind of the best collaborators are trusting and appreciative and support the kind of vision of the filmmaker, but at the same time ask questions and hopefully ask good questions that help refine the thing and help thinking. So, and Yorgos is very open to that. I think at the end of the day, as long as he knows that he retains creative control and has the final say, that's what's most important. That doesn't mean that no one else has a say either. It's a very kind of positive thing in that sense.
So when you guys were like getting into this, because I've done like some homework and just the sort of nature of the production, the builds you guys accomplished, the scope of the practical builds, the sound stages, you shot on like one of the largest sound stages in Budapest. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
And you relied so heavily on sort of the practical nature of the world you're creating. Did you guys realize that from like moment one that Yorgos wanted to go for it in that way?
Going back to your earlier question, I mean, my earliest memory of this project was precisely that. Ed had already engaged with Yorgos, having read the book and chatted to him about the project. And then we all met and sat down. And I remember him saying that his ambition was to try and shoot this in the style of a 1930s, 1940s Hollywood movie. So in other words, that everything would be shot on soundstage. And so that was a kind of a core principle in terms of how we set about figuring out how to make film. And we were lucky to have Kasia Malapan, who's a brilliant, experienced line producer who we had worked with in the past, and we brought her on board, and she was our co-producer on Poor Things. So Kasia worked very closely with our head of production here in Element, Paula Heffernan. And they did a trawl of locations around Europe where we could shoot. And obviously key consideration was studio space. And Budapest, as you say, the Corda Studios in Budapest is the largest soundstage in continental Europe. And then Origo is another studio in Budapest that has, I think, 6 or 7 studios, and we used 3 or 4 of those. So we figured out that Budapest had the capacity and also the technical ability. The craftspeople there are very good and very experienced to make the film. But kind of a key factor in figuring that out was we had a delay partly because of COVID. So we decided we would get on with some early design work. So we set up a sort of concepting workshop, and Shona and James, our production designers, brought a small core team together in London, and Film4 very sort of graciously agreed to pay for this. And so we had a couple of months where they were essentially world building and figuring out the look of the film and also the practical realities of it and how we might go about building it. And that included, a lot of images, obviously, but also models and, 3D graphics. So it was work that really stood to us and really helped us, it helped us kind of be very clear about what our requirements were and how to achieve it on a limited budget, because the budget was still, a challenge, obviously.
The film looks bigger than 35 million, which is sort of the published budget of the film. And you look at a Marvel movie, which costs significantly more than what you guys accomplished. And yet I feel like you guys were world building in a very like believable way. And I just wonder, like, how did you manage to bring the film in on that budget? Even if it were a bit above, it's still significantly cheaper than a lot of these world building productions.
I think because we come from an indie background, like that's where we come from. We don't come from a studio background, and we don't come from a kind of Marvel or Star Wars background. The impulse is always going into it sort of going, well, how little can we make this for? Also, it was a kind of, for all of us, and when I say us, I mean all of the heads of department, the producing team, Yorgos, etc. It was by far the biggest film we had ever done. And so everyone was really stepping up and everyone was really committed to kind of squeezing every last euro out of our production budget. And so I suppose there's a kind of a sensibility which is where you're taking an awful lot of responsibility as a head of department for your area and pulling it in on budget. And there's nowhere to go. So there's no kind of phone call to make to someone who's going to give you more money because it doesn't exist. So there's basically a kind of a cutting of cloth and intensity and a concentration of resources that comes from that mindset, because we can't go over. There's nowhere to go, And, we, as Andrew said, there was a lot of due diligence, in terms of where we could shoot this film and where best to make it. And although many of our heads of department were British based, UK based, not all, but many, it would have been way more expensive to make it in the UK, for instance, and actually Hungary offered a great combination of, highly skilled crews and really good facilities and a tax credit that just made it all possible. It's about it's a very objective exercise. You run budgets for multiple territories, you look at the tax credits and you make a decision on that basis. And don't know if I can say this or we could say this, but I don't think we could have made that film anywhere else for that price other than Hungary at that time. And also the other thing you have to take into account, it was in the middle of COVID.
So impressive. I mean, because the artfulness of the production design, the costume, I could just go on and on about the costume.
But you're right. Those people did an extraordinary job. We're so proud to be associated with them and to kind of have been able to witness the kind of the commitment and the quality of work that those people put in.
The craftsmanship. You're not going to like TJ Maxx and buying those costumes off
absolutely
the rack.
Not. No, absolutely not. And also Yorgos is very good at he's a very good collaborator. I mean, for someone who, in a sense, is such an auteur, he also is very trusting of his collaborators in the sense that he wants people to come to him with ideas. And what he's really good at is curating the ideas.
Yes.
He'll provide the initial inspiration. He'll want to see, what that kind of inspires in the people that he's working with. And then he'll curate the things that they offer up to him. So that, for all of those people, there's a lot of agency in terms of the work they're doing, which of course also makes it very satisfying for them as artists, to actually be able to sort of offer things to him that he gets excited about that then turn into a reality.
So you're saying that Yorgos has opened this playground. He's hired these heads of department and he wants ideas brought to him, and then he can sort of filter through.
Absolutely.
What the world is going to ultimately be.
Yeah. They will talk about, he'll offer at the very beginning of a conversation some key thoughts or ideas or references, but quite minimal and quite spare, but very thought through. It's like planting a seed. That's the seed. And if the ground is fertile, then something amazing kind of blooms out of that.
What was a reference that you guys recall as a maybe visual reference for the film? Because it feels so completely original to me and also different from his other work.
As Andrew said, kind of some of those kind of 1930s sort of Bela Lugosi kind of things,
He shared some paintings as well with some, with the heads of the department to sort of inspire them. So they weren't just film references.
Oh, that's great. What was the painter?
Hieronymus Bosch. And, he makes a very elaborate, sort of striking, sort of medieval paintings of humankind in all its debauched forms. It's quite fantastic images.
We will need less of your tongue in the future, but overall most agreeable.
I find myself merely jealous of the men's time with you, rather than any moral aspersion against you. It is your body, Bella Baxter, yours to give freely.
I generally charge 30 francs.
Well, that seems low.
The element of humor, which that sort of very unique humor Yorgos had, did you always know that was going to be like a significant element of the movie from the get-go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's great humor in the book, but also then in Tony's script. Like, it's a comedy. I mean, among other things, it's a comedy. And actually, everything Yorgos does is a comedy. You know, it's always there's art. You know, as well as being other things. So yeah, so that kind of spirit is very much in it, I think. And you know, but it's also like with Yorgos. You know, he's a filmmaker who can kind of, you know, sort of pivot from gross violence to unbelievable farce in like the same
a heartbeat,
the same nanosecond, the same moment.
Totally.
So there's always kind of huge kind of tonal range in the movies, and in a way that sort of extremity is very much also part of, I mean, I suppose part of the film, you know, the design and the look of the film. And because it was the first time that he ever shot on the soundstage, the first time that he ever used a composer. So I guess that gives you a lot of opportunity to create something, you know, from your imagination or from the imagination of a set of people.
Yes.
You know, Yorgos's approach as a director, it also extends to the way in which he works with the cast. So again, he's not prescriptive with his actors. He, you know, they I'm sure you will have seen it. They've talked a lot about, you know, they had 3 weeks of rehearsals, and the rehearsals aren't sort of, you know, classical rehearsals, but they're role playing and games and, you know, kind of breaking down barriers and building trust between them all. And when it comes to actual performance, Yorgos is not prescriptive in any way. So he's very open to what the actors themselves bring to the character. And I think in the case of Emma, she's a brilliant comic actress. You know, you see that in her career. She's a naturally very funny person too. And equally, Mark Ruffalo turns out is a great comic actor, and you know, Rami's a great comic actor. So all of those actors brought a lot to the role.
I think not only are the choices of the actors unique and outside the box a little bit, but their choices for their performances are really quite bold. When I first started watching Emma, I was like, is she going to speak in this stilted way the entire time? And then first of all, her performance evolves. So I cannot even imagine how she could keep it straight, but it was brilliant. I mean, it was a choice though. And I watched a little bit of them being interviewed, Yorgos and Emma and Mark, and that period of those 3 weeks seemed to like really break down any fear they might have. But I wanted to sort of hear that from your perspectives.
No, it's exactly that. You know, there's a kind of, it's sort of about being disinhibited and, you know, allowing, you know, the process during those weeks is that they get to know each other very well, and there's a kind of intimacy, but also there's a kind of a freedom and a kind of desire to experiment and just try things out, you know. And so in that room, it's very much about that kind of bonding and that idea that you can take risks and that you're in a kind of trusting space and that anything goes in a sense. And I think that's where, you know, Mark's crazy Duncan Wedderburn came out of, you know, because it's sort of crazy sort of gesture, unlike anything you've seen before, either from him or indeed from anyone else. So you have to kind of be in a very free environment in order to do that. And same for what you're saying about Emma. And it's not that there wasn't kind of sort of more technical work going into the performances. There is, in the sense that, say, with Bella, creating the part of Bella, and exactly as you were alluding to earlier, you know, they Yorgos and Emma came up with sort of the 5 stages of Bella. So, you know, the different kind of, you know, as she grew up, if you like, which is all the more important because even though we mainly shot the film in sequence, as in we started in London and we then moved to Lisbon and Paris, we started and finished the film on the London set, so that for the first, I don't remember how many weeks, 2 or 3 weeks of the film, Emma had to go from being baby Bella to grown-up Bella because it was all the same. So in a sense, they had marked out these kind of the stages of Bella so that she could, you know, navigate that, but also navigate her way through the film and the development of the character, if you like.
Did he always know it was Emma when it was being written? Was it for her?
Yeah, effectively. I mean, as Andrew said earlier, like it was, you know, it was sort of, I think, Yorgos meeting Emma on The Favourite and really getting on so brilliantly with her and kind of finding this unique collaboration with each other, her interest in the project, and in a way, the reason we got to make it is The Favourite was a hit and Emma Stone signed up to do the film. That's how we got to make Poor Things, And, we needed an actor like Emma, and there aren't actually any other actors like Emma other than Emma. So it was a unique proposition. We needed Emma Stone to get this film made. And luckily she, not only got on board with it, but was very, very instrumental in shaping it and guiding it and defending it and advocating for it at every step.
I noticed that she's a producer on this along with you and Yorgos. And what sort of producer has she become or was on this?
Very much in kind of the development pre-production phase, talking to Yorgos about the script and about other casts and about, how scenes would work, etc. When we were in production, very much focused on being Bella and performing that part and building that part. But then once we're in post, very active around the cuts and advocating for the film and thinking about how it goes out into the world. And, so much so that, even though she wasn't allowed because of the SAG strike to be part of the kind of the rollout of the film initially, she came to Telluride and stayed in her hotel room just so she could be close to it. And in touch all the time and talking all the time. And even now, today, as BAFTA nominations come out and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, amazing. Congratulations, guys. Honestly, I mean, we're sort of jumping ahead.
Although we're all disappointed that Yorgos didn't get nominated. That seems very unjust. And neither Willem or Mark, which may sound churlish, but when so much else gets nominated, it feels frustrating. But
I know. Well, I will go on record as saying that I believe Mark Ruffalo deserves an Oscar for that performance. But okay, so talk a little bit about Willem and Rami. And I just felt like all the casting was just so Gerard and really inspired and a little bit out of the box. How did that come together?
We worked with a great casting director based in London called Dixie Chassis, who had done The Favourite. She's great taste and great instincts, great kind of breadth of knowledge. But also Yorgos kind of sees everything. He watches everything. So he had seen Rami's show and don't ask me how, but somehow joined the dots between that and Max McCandless, which God knows how he joined those dots, but joined them he did. But I think that he saw something in Rami and equally Gerard, is sort of, again, loved his stand-up and all that kind of stuff. So it was sort of, I think Yorgos, he watches a lot. He decides who he likes, and then he kind of files them away for later reference. And I think, he dug into his files. And I think it was always trying to keep the cast lively and unexpected and diverse and all of those things that feed into making something that kind of feels special and fresh. And it's not like it's a kind of a more mysterious process than maybe with others where you're kind of running lists and talking about the merits and demerits. There's a bit more kind of there's a bit more left field stuff coming in and out and kind of, again, as you can see from the final cast.
All from his sort of brain and like sort of vision boarding.
And, Emma would have fed in, Dixie would have fed in, but it's sort of like looking at who's doing good work, who's interesting. There's also a thing with Yorgos where he really likes to have nice collaborative people around him. So the kind of the spirit of the ensemble, the cast, and indeed the crew, that there's a kind of a functionality and a levity to it is really important. And those sets are actually really nice sets to be on. I mean, on the one hand, he likes to keep the set very small and focused so that, the actors can do their work, but they have a great time. And part of our job is to try and sort of insulate them from some of the sort of behind the scenes stresses and strains that might go on, so that when they're on the floor, you can almost close the door and they'll get on with it. And there's a lot of fun in it, actually. So I think that's also really important to him in terms of who he works with. I think the idea of working with someone who's very difficult or doesn't kind of climb into the process with gusto and who has a process that may be very different to the other actors, I think that's not a positive, I would say.
My vision of a Yorgos set is that it's a playground. It's like happy accidents happen and Emma kicked the lens and it's in the movie. And
totally.
It seems true, but talk about the actual shoot a bit.
It is, but as I said earlier, like in a way, even though these are huge sets and, in some scenes there are loads of actors and extras and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of the time it's literally you try and close the door on the cast, and Robbie and Haley are first, and sound and grip, etc. But a really small gang of people, and they'll come out for lunch and they'll go back in after lunch and they'll come out in the evening. And I mean, it's obviously not that simple, but actually it kind of is also. And Yorgos, he tends to, stay on schedule, he shoots his days. And the things that tend to upset that are often technical things that aren't quite working, that aren't, but rarely to do with kind of not being able to get a performance or, anything that's on the immediate floor. Although there are real challenges, of course, and often the challenges present at the end of a day when we're looking at the set for the next day or the day after, and we realize that something isn't quite working as it should. That's where the challenges can be. But generally, the shooting day is super functional, unless something, untoward.
Are you guys sitting by village? Are you watching takes, or are you sort of managing more the traumas going on outside the bubble?
Kind of in and out, to be honest. One of us is always around, and Kasia is day to day kind of running it all and is fantastic, absolutely brilliant, has the whole equation of the film in her head. We leave him to it mainly.
As you mentioned, the village, Yorgos he's not into having, a whole bunch of people sitting at a bank of monitors, and he talks himself a lot about, he's setting out to make films in Greece, and he used to work with a small bunch of friends, and it was a very intimate experience shooting those early films. And that's a kind of an atmosphere he likes to try and preserve on set. So even though the scale of Poor Things is bigger than something any of us had done before, when it came to actually shooting scenes, there was a lighting rig was put in before we actually built the set. So there was, so the only people who needed to be in the room, were the cast, Yorgos and Robbie, and maybe a sound person, Robbie the DOP. So it's really quite, small and intimate in that way.
So Bella's so much to discover, and your sad face makes me discover angry feelings for you.
So how long was the shoot, and were there any moments from the shoot that you remember that speak to the film itself?
10 weeks.
11.
11. Yeah, we had to add a couple of extra days. And as we said, it was shot in the height of COVID. So even though it looks glorious and fun, as you say, when you watch the film, outside of those sets, everyone's done around in all the gear. And so that was the shoot, and all of which took place in Budapest. Like in some ways, one of the striking memories I have of the film was the first time I visited the London set. And I hadn't been in Budapest in a couple of weeks, and I came back, and James and Shona gave us a tour, and it was just breathtaking. The textures, the detail on the walls, fabric on the floors, the whole thing was just extraordinary and breathtaking. And it was, for me, I remember, kind of coming away from that going, wow, this is real and it's happening, and this is going to work, like it just looks so amazing.
Totally. That moment where you realize when audiences see something, they're going to be blown away. I read this interview with Emma where she said the light switches were designed as female genitalia, and I was just like, that level of detail, I can't. I mean, it's just like beyond. It's mind blowing, and maybe you would never even pick up on that as a viewer of the first time around. But when there's like layers upon layers upon layers, that's when you realize like a film could be one of the greats. And then the post process, did the edit come together quite easily? Like it seemed like it took a minute in post.
He takes a long time in the cutting room. It's quite a reflective process. So we always try and build in that kind of
That reality.
yeah, exactly. And that feels so right because relatively speaking, it's a very cheap part of the process. So why put huge pressure on that, if you like? So that is always, while we might say we'll take X number of weeks to cut the film, or, we always know that we'll go over and we never worry about it too much. The other thing that meant that Poor Things was a long process was there's a lot of visual effects. And again, you won't be surprised to hear that Yorgos is super specific and picky about the quality of the visual effects. So that can mean a lot of looking at stuff again and trying things out and all that kind of stuff. And we also then shot another film in the middle because we knew the visual effects would take quite a long time. We thought we should have shot a film called Kinds of Kindness in New Orleans, again with Emma and Willem Dafoe, among others.
You guys shot another film in the midst of your post of Poor Things.
Another film with Yorgos. Because there was a sense that the visual effects would take a while, then there was also the possibility to be doing something else at the same time. I mean, the equation doesn't quite work out that way. Obviously, It takes longer to prep, shoot, and another film than does to do the visual effects. So that's sort of why it took a moment to kind of come together.
Brilliant. And is that movie, right, now that you're saying it, I know exactly what that movie is. Is that a Fox Searchlight film also, or is that a different?
It is.
Oh my God. They're just doubling down. Yeah. They're like, we're going to be in business with you people till the end of time. That's incredible.
Yeah, no, it is.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it was fun to get to do that.
So you round the bend on the visual effects. Remind me what festivals you guys premiered at this season.
Venice, Telluride, London, New York. I think those were the principal ones. There's a few more.
All the big guns.
But yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so you were getting this very positive response from festivals. Were you feeling confident in the rollout of the film? Because I have to be honest, it truly is one of my favorite films of the year, but I speak to people who are quite polarized by it. Like they have violent reactions to the film.
Sure.
And I don't totally understand it, but I just wondered, like, what, from your perspective, what has that been like?
I mean, we were we were nervous putting it out there for sure. It's a very strong, distinct vision, and we wouldn't expect that it would be for everyone. It wouldn't be doing its job if it was for everyone. But at the same time, you wanted to land well, and it did land really well. But we were nervous about it, and also nervous because in that first kind of unveiling of the film, we didn't have Emma or the rest of the cast around it, but particularly Emma to speak to it, actually, both as star and producer and kind of co-creator, if you like, of the movie with Yorgos. As a woman, to have that voice in the mix, we were anxious that we would really miss her and how people, how the film was talked about. But it landed really well, and, we were really happy by the critical response, which was excellent. And it sort of gave everyone confidence to really push forward with it. So, but look, you're never, I don't know when you're ever confident about something landing, particularly if it's something that's taking a big swing.
You guys are in the midst of your journey right now, and you're going to all the award shows. But stepping back to talk about Yorgos as an evolving filmmaker, for me, this is my favorite film of his. And I feel like it stretched his muscles in a different direction that I really didn't. There's a sort of, to me, a warmth to it I hadn't seen in other films. And I just wonder, was it just stretching a different muscle and he'll do something different next time? Or is this sort of the direction he's headed? Because it feels like now you can't put him in a box. And now he just seems to be like surprising everyone every time he makes a movie. So I was just curious what you thought this represented.
I think it's just another step. I don't think he ever wants to repeat himself. And I think he always wants to grow. One thing I think that's pretty certain is that himself and Emma will continue to find each other in collaborations together. But I think they are equally excited to kind of push things, as they work together. Actually, I think that's a really potent combination in the sense that, they will goad each other and push each other in the very best way. And he's a total iconoclast, Yorgos. obviously he enjoys the fact that audiences respond to things and all of that stuff. But ultimately, he's really interested in the work and pushing boundaries, and that's what gets him excited. And I think to the extent that Poor Things buys him bandwidth and trust from the world, I think he'll take every inch that's offered to him and more, probably.
Well, we talk about this a lot on the pod because we do reflect on these great filmmakers, whether it's Chris Nolan or Scorsese or David O. Russell. And there's a certain moment where a filmmaker, they can ask you to read the phone book.
Yeah.
The actor will do it because they so deeply believe in the vision of the filmmaker. And it seems to me that like there has been that tipping point for Yorgos, and he's now there.
Yeah.
And he is so deeply respected for his original vision. And so it must have been so rewarding for you guys to sort of observe that progress, and so exciting to continue down the path with him. So you guys have obviously done tremendous work yourselves.
Well, we're looking to be on the train, so we'll hang on for as long as we can.
Congratulations, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniela.
Tremendous fan of you both and the work you're doing. And
thank you.
I wish you all the best. And I hope you guys come back to do this again because it's so fun and you guys make such great films.
Thank you
love
so
to.
much.
We'd love to.
It's been lovely.
Okay.
Yeah, great fun.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you both soon, okay?
Bye-bye.
All the best. See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bex. I'm so jealous of Ed and Andrew. They get to produce Yorgos Lanthimos, who is clearly like hit that tier of director where he can probably make whatever he wants with whomever he wants at this point.
Yeah.
But he also seems to be such a lovely gentleman and responsible. They made this movie for $35 million, and it feels to me so much bigger. It feels like
$100 million.
100%. It feels like on the level of these Marvel films, and yet they managed to bring it in for $35 million. So that is just like, world creation is a difficult thing, and they really did create a world here. And the fact that they were able to do it for that budget is like so inspiring to me because as they are, we are truly independent filmmakers who just like want to get great content made.
They flat out said that they couldn't have got this movie made without Emma Stone. And I think, to be honest, that's the case with a lot of films. Everyone knows the concept of a movie star.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people don't realize that literally a movie star can get a movie made, one that's been, in development for 10 years. All of a sudden, if Emma Stone or Margot Robbie says we're on board, then your movie is getting made. So the power that these stars have is incredible, and the passion that they bring to these projects, because Emma Stone gets submitted so much stuff, right?
That's right.
The fact that she picked this one, she picked Yorgos, she took a risk and was really involved is pretty incredible.
All right, Bex, we're going to get into that trivia game that we did during the Hunger Games episode. People really seem to like that. So let's run it back and do some trivia facts for our new favorite film, Poor Things.
So first one, in preparation for her role, Emma Stone took dance lessons and dyed her hair black, which she admitted was accidental. Yorgos reflected that the dark hair contrasted with her fair complexion, and they agreed to go forward with that look for her character.
It feels like this is true and that there are a lot of happy accidents that happened on the film. I was watching the DP talk about like certain things that were completely accidental and then Yorgos really liked them and they stayed in the film. Emma kicked the lens at one point and that shot stayed in the film and things like that. And so this feels completely true to Yorgos's process, and her black hair is very severe. It's like down to her ankles and it's completely black, and it is a completely bizarre and amazing look that they just went for. So good for them.
But that surprises me because it comes across like it's such a choice, right? Like I don't think we've ever seen Emma Stone with black hair. We've seen her blonde. Yeah, she's iconic for her red hair, but the black hair felt like such a choice. So that's fun to learn that was an accident.
I loved it.
It's great.
I was very into it. What's next, Bex?
Rami Youssef revealed that in preparation for their roles, he and William Dafoe attended mortician school as a part of the experimental theater games that Yorgos assigned the cast prior to filming. I just think that's
classic
wild.
Yorgos also. Like such a perverse sense of humor that you would go to mortician school and learn the actual arts.
It's like you hear about, obviously actors who are in action movies having to go to like training or boot camp or whatever, which makes sense. But mortician school, I would never think that.
Only on a Yorgos Lanthimos movie would that happen. But again, totally appropriate and really paid off. Both Rami and Willem felt very, very true to their characters. Felt like they knew what they were doing. This next one, I should have brought this up in the interview. I'm fascinated by this. I'll tell you why in a minute.
That Willem Dafoe spent 6 hours each day in the hair and makeup department, 4 hours getting extensive prosthetics applied to his face, and 2 hours to get it all off at the end of the day.
I mean, that means that Willem Dafoe was probably on set at least 12 to 14 plus hours a day.
Yeah.
That is so crazy to me. I mean, that happens for a lot of people wearing prosthetics, but just having gone through a film, really, if you think about your day, working more than 10 hours a day is a lot. It's a lot for anyone. And to have to sit in a makeup chair and have prosthetics put on for 4 hours and then go like do your best acting work that's the stuff that doesn't get talked about very much. It's like, that is incredible.
Yeah. The mental fortitude it takes to be able to do that. Like I can't even
100%.
I've only gotten my makeup done a handful of times in my life, but if I'm in like a makeup chair for 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, get me out of here.
I know.
So
it's like a half hour tops and you're like, get me out of there. I hope he was able to sleep during that at least when he was like getting his makeup off. I've observed certain, I'll go to the makeup trailer and I see them kind of dozing off, but it's difficult. It's difficult to sleep when you have people touching your face in any event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, Bex?
I think that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was like just an incredible episode. I loved hearing the process of this like completely exotic, amazing work of imagination come to light. The fact that they like pulled it off for like a somewhat indie budget. No, it's a lot of money, but still the movies we've seen are like that sort of compared to that in terms of world creation are like 3, 4, 5 times that budget. So it was just really impressive. And obviously they're just great producers. So that was a good one. Bex, you do the sign off.
Well, thank you all for continuing to listen and support our Hollywood Gold podcast. Remember to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Stay Gold Features. Always DM us with any suggestions for films, filmmakers that you want us to interview on the podcast. And always remember to stay gold.
Stay gold, guys.